To another topic, and the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah Sisi pledged support for the U.S. war against extremist militants, but called on President Barack Obama to widen his campaign against extremism well beyond Iraq and Syria. Sisi, in his interview in the United States since formally taking power in June, also cautioned the administration against washing its hand of the Middle East at a time when the region's borders are in flux and the threat of militancy is growing with the instability. Mr. Sisi cited terrorist threats in Libya, Sudan, Yemen and the Sinai Peninsula as mirroring the danger posed to the Middle East and the West by the extremist militias in Iraq and Syria. We'll be speaking more about this topic. We're joined with the senior journalist, Gamal. Zaida, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me here.
Always value your opinion, so I'd like to start first with the way, as a journalist, what are your remarks upon the tackling of the American media of Sisi's trip to New York?
In fact, I have watched some of the U.S. media yesterday before the speech has been delivered by President Abdel Fattah Sisi in front of the General Assembly, and after the speech. I can tell you my remarks regarding the program, the TV program of Charlie Rose on CBS, the interview he made with President Abdel Fattah Sisi. I mean, the president was very clear with Charlie Rose when he asked him about if Egypt is going to join the international coalition against ISIS. And he said, I mean, we are waiting where the Apache and the F-16, the U.S. administration has promised to give it to Egypt. So, I mean, this was a sign that Egypt has a special policy toward terrorism. Let me explain this point, because
exactly what is the philosophy, or what is the strategy in Europe?
That Egypt does not make a difference between terrorism on the Egyptian land, like the terrorism happening in Sinai and the terrorism of ISIS. As you know, that the U.S. administration is refusing to admit that the Muslim Brothers are a terrorist group till now. I mean, if you see, the Russian position is different completely. I mean, before even the 25th of January 2011 revolution, they considered the Muslim Brothers are a threat to the security, and they are a terrorist group. But on the contrary, the U.S. administration is refusing to do the same, because they were having a dialogue with the leaders of the Muslim Brothers. But after, why, I mean, the United States decided to launch war against ISIS, because at the beginning, I mean, some sources, they said that the U.S. administration, Qatar and Turkey were supporting financially some of the terrorist groups on Syria. And even they were under the flag of trying to remove the regime of Bashar al-Assad. But when they started slaughtering and beheading the U.S. journalists, I mean, they decided that ISIS and some other Islamic groups are danger on the U.S. security and on the international security. So they decided to move against them and to remove ISIS, and that's why, I mean, they made this international coalition. But let me be frank with you. I mean, they didn't get the approval of the Security Council. I mean, like the last time. I mean, and now they have to go to the Security Council to ask for the approval of attacking Syria. we have our worries, we have our concerns regarding what's happening now in Syria and Iraq.
But we already started air raids. You know, unlike what happened in Libya, for example, there was a UN Security Council resolution before the airstrikes.
I mean, to launch a war against another country, no matter the justification is, you got to have the approval of the Security Council. I mean, to have the legal international action. But what happened? The United States decided, and they launched the war. All of us are against the Islamic terrorism. I mean, from ISIS and from the other groups. But I mean, the Egyptian point of view is do not make a difference between terrorism happening by the Muslim Brothers and terrorism happening by ISIS. And we have to be clear regarding the ideological background of the terrorist groups. I mean, it came from the literature of the Muslim Brothers. I mean, Al-Jama'ah Al-Islamiyya, the jihadists in Egypt, and the others. So we have to be clear. The international community has to take the one stand against terrorism, whether it's happening in Egypt or in Iraq or in Syria.
Yes, like a decade ago, the United States also launched, this, campaign and initiative against Iraq, and they invaded Iraq for a decade. Now, do you think this is a return for the United States with a clear interest in the region, or is it the threat of terrorism?
I mean, there is a lot of concerns, I mean, in Egypt and in the Middle East regarding what's going to happen for the national states, I mean, in Iraq and in Syria. Nobody knows, especially the mandate of this war launched by the United States is 3 years. So, I mean, we are wondering, I mean, does it take 3 years to eradicate between 20,000 and 30,000 of ISIS troops? I mean, this is too much. Nobody knows the hidden agenda. What's going to happen? I mean, and who is going to have the land troops? Because no matter the air strikes, I mean, you have to have troops on land to see what's happening. I mean, and they have to declare I mean, how many has been killed from the U.S. raids on Syria, how many has been killed from civilians, women, children, what happened to the targets of the U.S. raids on Syria. I mean, the CNN always broadcasting the rockets coming from the U.S. bases on the Red Sea and the Gulf area, but they never show us the consequences of these U.S. strikes on Syria. I do believe we need some transparency when it comes to the consequences of the bombing of Syria. And does it include to remove the regime of Bashar al-Assad, or just to eradicate ISIS from Iraq and Syria?
Exactly. In your opinion, how did ISIS or Daesh be created in the region all of a sudden?
And nobody knows.
What is the explanation?
Nobody knows. I mean, all what we know.
How could they appear all of a sudden with all of these equipments, with all of these weapons?
I mean, we have to say it clearly that many groups, armed groups, had received finance and support from the western side, from Qatar, from Turkey, under the justification of removing the regime of Bashar al-Assad. And after a while, including ISIS, and after a while, we have seen a monster moving on the land and in crossing the international borders between Syria and Iraq, threatening the nation state of Iraq, and they showed us as a war between Sunni and Shiite.
Yes.
And there is many questions unanswered regarding ISIS, how it's being created, what happened, who financed ISIS, is it Qatar, is it Turkey, is it some of the Gulf countries, or what happened exactly, or the Western world?
Yes, this is very true. And at the end, Gamal, I'd like to thank you very much. As usual, we enjoy your insights and your opinions. It has been a great pleasure to have you with us in Nile Cruise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now let's move on for this upcoming break and returning with more.